So I was going to respond to this particular article here by Vox called "What We Still Haven't Learned from Gamergate. Gamergate should have armed us against bad actors and bad faith arguments." It didn't. But the problem is, the article is far too long, so instead I'm going to talk about the general issue it has, which is, it simply can't move on from Gamergate. And there is another issue with it, that is, it's just projection. Pretty much all the things it's saying about these bad faith arguments and actors is what Vox itself does on a regular basis. But this is a regular feature of what we see on the progressive left. They simply cannot move on from Gamergate. They can't move on from 2014. I guess this is the year where the whole foundations of their movement, the whole foundations of their world order began to crumble as people began to wake up and see, hang on a sec, this isn't quite right. Reality isn't what we thought it was. It wasn't what you told us what it was. This is when people started to realise that, hang on, these people are infiltrating our communities, they are infiltrating systems of power and government, and they're warping and changing them, trying to change these subcultures into things that they're not, into accepting things that they're not, to fostering nepotism in the gaming media to such an extent that people were sleeping around for clicks, people were sleeping around for reviews. And apparently this was okay, this was considered ethical behaviour because, you know, it's just relationships, it's just sex. It has no bearing on our journalistic integrity, even though it clearly does, because there's a thing called conflict of interest. And that means that your review of this person that you like, who you may even be intimate with, is compromised because there's already bias from the get-go. Yes, you can never get rid of bias 100%, but when it's about somebody who you like a lot, and you know personally, and you're reviewing it, and you're giving it a good review, and you're intimate with them to some extent, yeah, questions have to be raised about how good of a review this is, how well you're informing people. And not only that, we've seen how our freedoms have been slowly eroded by this said group of people over many, many years. 50 years if you really want to go far back, because it really started when they gained control of the universities. And lo and behold, all you have to do is look at that to see what they're pumping out of said universities to realise that this whole thing has been a disaster. But nonetheless, that is one of the reasons why they don't like Gamergate, because people began to, I guess, get their red pill moments. They were waking up, they were seeing the reality for what it really was. But another thing was, it seemed to shock them, which is weird because you'd think that other things would shock them. But no, Gamergate, a consumer revolt, shocked them because I think they were expecting gamers to kind of be on their side, the downtrodden nerds, the people who traditionally would have been against their own enemies, the religious right or just the conservative traditional right in general. But no, they turned against them. And unfortunately for the SJWs, they didn't realise that they were also a very independent subculture. Maybe less so now, but certainly in 2014, they were given a rather big shock because the people who they, for years, had pretended to defend, who they had gained the trust of, had lost trust completely and were now being criticised and attacked. In many ways, it's kind of like the working class voting against a socialist party and electing a conservative party. That's really what it is, and that's why they can't get over it, because they feel betrayed, even though really, if any people should feel betrayed, it's gamers that should feel betrayed. It's the atheist movement that should feel betrayed. It should be many other movements and other subcultures around the world that should feel betrayed by the left, but you know what? It is what it is. And I think another thing is they still are reeling from the bite that Gamergate gave them, because it was a real kick in the teeth. People don't realise that Gawker lost 6 figures because of Gamergate's advertising campaign when we went out there and wrote to advertisers telling them about all the unethical practices that all these different gaming journals, newspaper websites and even Gawker themselves were doing. And it hurt them, it really hurt them, to the point that Gawker eventually, mainly due to other things aside from Gamergate like Hulk Hogan's court case, eventually they folded. And not only that, several of these newspaper websites had to update their ethics policies because now they were being watched by people. They could no longer just sit back and relax and expect a rather tepid and docile audience to just lap up their crap, because they weren't even selling us games journalism. They were selling us political about how male gamers are toxic and how these certain games, how these certain tropes echoing Anita Sarkeesian are sexist and things like that. Well, really, we just wanted reviews, we wanted the latest news, we wanted things that were happening in the industry to be shed light upon, especially if it's a really bad thing. Things that were going on that are important to gamers were not being discussed by these said outlets, because mainly they were in the pockets of the industry, but also because they just weren't interested. A lot of these journalists actually are not gamers. All you have to look at is Dean Takahashi. Apparently he's got 20 years experience working as a games journalist, but he can't play video games. And we're expected to take his opinion, his reviews of games seriously if he can't even play most of them. I think I'd rather not. Yeah, I'd rather go to a person who knows about what they're talking about, who actually plays the things that they're talking about, than somebody who doesn't. And that ties in neatly with the fact that gamers increasingly, but eventually, especially after Gamergate, gamers began to move towards YouTube and other independent outlets like Super Nerdland, who, although I think they may have a YouTube channel, they're primarily an outlet. They're a games journalism outlet, but they're actually ethical, they actually are gamers, and they know what they're talking about. People were moving away from the mainstream and heading to other areas for their news, for their reviews, to look at the latest games, to see people playing them, and also to find essays about games, the actual games, core, the essence of these games, not just pointless media studies drivel. This is why people like Super Bunny Hop are so successful, why people like Max Derat, for example, is becoming successful when he talks about video games, because it's deep, thoughtful analysis, it's not something regurgitated for a media studies professor, and that is one of the reasons why they simply can't let it go, because it shifted the culture, it shifted power away from them, and they need power, and that's why they can't get over it. And another thing is, another thing is that it's just a very useful go-to for a boogeyman. Because of its initial small but very bright cultural impact, they can use it to scare other people within their ideology into towing the line. They can use it to scare the people who are normies, who at least are vaguely aware of it, and say, look, this is an evil, toxic, misogynistic hate group, even though it wasn't, and we all know the case that it wasn't. This can happen if we don't clamp down on these groups, if we don't push for internet censorship, if we don't push even for real life censorship, if we don't censor video games, if we don't try and change the way they're made to suit our own ideology. Because if you don't, your sons, hell, even your daughters, will become radicalised. But of course, we know the real extremists are them. They are the far leftists. They are communists, essentially. They're the ones that are going to be doing the brainwashing, not Gamergate, not a consumer revolt. And I think another thing is that it exposed them for what they really are. They are the elites. They are the ones in charge. They are the ones who are against the people, who are anti-consumer. Once the demagogic image had fallen, and we saw the emperor without any clothes, well, it was never going to be the same again, was it? And that's why they can get over it. I was going to say, please, get over it. It is done. It is finished. But the more I think about it, the more I realise, well, you know what? Let them continue. But the thing is, guys, Gamergate is over. Gamergate is not even the watchdog that we thought it was going to be. Nobody's using the hashtag. It's over. It's dead. It's not been a thing since at least 2016. The more I look back on it, the less the cultural impact to me seems to be. Yes, it was a very bright flash. Yes, it made a lot of us change our opinions. It made us go down a different path entirely from what we were going down. Yes, it may have influenced certain things online, maybe real life. Maybe some political changes wouldn't have happened without it. But you can't really connect the dots. Can't connect Gamergate to Trump like a lot of you have tried to do. I just don't think it's possible. It was really an online thing entirely. It may have changed discourse online. It may have changed the way things were going on afterwards, because again, censorship really heightened during that. We were seeing things that we hadn't seen before that are now really the norm. So in that sense, I guess in terms of the elite's response, that was the biggest cultural impact it had. But other than that, it was fleeting, because there have been bigger events, such as the election of Trump, Brexit, for example, that are far more important, far more far-reaching than Gamergate could possibly be. Gamergate only really affected the internet. It only really affected the gaming community as such. Though, again, I might be wrong. Maybe this is just me looking back with black-pilled glasses. But the work of Gamergate was never done. It was never even finished. We didn't succeed. We're still fighting an uphill battle. But you know what? At least I can say that I was proud of what I did. I fought for a good principle, for ethics in journalism. I fought for the people who were truly downtrodden. And it wasn't pixels in a video game, guys. It was a consumer who was being lied to, the consumer who was being given faulty products. It was a consumer that had to deal with a terrible industry for far too long. And well, nothing is fixed yet, but maybe one day. You never know. So really, you ought to move on from Gamergate for your own good, because there are more pressing concerns for your movement than talking about Gamergate constantly and calling other people Gamergaters and things like that. There are things that you need to talk about, there are things you need to address that you're not really giving your full attention because of this boogeyman that you've concocted. You need to move on, otherwise you're going to fall even further than you already have done. But you know what? Keep doing it, because it only helps me. So anyway, guys, sorry I've been gone for a while. First it was Bannerlord, and then, you know, I just couldn't find the time to do anything apart from that. So anyway, here's the video. Hope you enjoy it. Until next time, I'll see you later.